Also, everyone, trust everyone's well. Thanks for your feedback, comments after having a chat with Shihan Cameron Quinn. Fantastic. And I hope everyone's doing well. We have a special guest, very special guest from the other side of the planet, from Tokyo, Japan. We have Sensei Sam Gilbert. Sam, good morning or afternoon to you. I hope you're well.
Oh, Spad, thank you. It is still morning over here, and yeah, I'm doing okay.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We've been chatting on social media, and so you know, it's some tough times as we speak. But to get a chance to talk to people like yourself, it'd be great to, I guess, firstly get a bit of a 2-minute spiel on how everything's going in your neck of the woods there with your family and so forth. Because you were in Australia only a couple of weeks ago, so I guess share with some people a bit of that situation that just occurred before we get stuck into it.
Yeah, it's a crazy time, sir. Japan isn't in lockdown, and we haven't enforced the type of measures that are being enforced elsewhere in the world. It's sort of typical Japanese way that, yeah, often the Japanese people don't like to make decisions. So you've almost got a standoff between a prime minister who's sort of prioritising the economy and just wants to keep the country running. And then you've got a governor of Tokyo who does want to sort of shut things down. And so the message that's out there is that we would like the citizens to stay at home and avoid contact where possible, but they're not forcing businesses to close and things like that. So our business, which we can talk about a bit later, I run a physiotherapy clinic and fitness centre. We are continuing to run. We're being meticulous in our cleaning and hygiene to try and minimise the risk. But we are trying to still stay available for the people that need us. As you said, I was back in Australia. We actually went back for my brother's wedding. And his wedding was scheduled on I think the Friday, the 20th of March. And I think it was Wednesday, the 18th, that the Prime Minister came out and said that couldn't have gatherings of more than 100 people. And so they had to cancel their wedding 2 days out. So it's absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah, we came back to Japan, and when we got back, we decided as a business that we would request that people who had been overseas, anywhere in the world, we sort of changed it from specific locations just to a broad recommendation that, that people didn't come into our facility. And because of that, it sort of meant that I had to follow those guidelines. So I have been self-isolating for almost 2 weeks now at home with the family, which is which has been fun in some ways. You know, I got to spend more time with the wife and kids, but it's been obviously difficult in a lot of ways as well.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I guess it gives perspective to everyone that's listening around the world. So thanks for that. And we trust everyone's well at your end, and sorry to hear about your brother's side of it. And we got to keep going. So, hey, Sensei, great to have time here. We've got an opportunity to, I guess, have a good chat about I go into a frame of past, present, and future. And I guess for those out there that aren't familiar with you, in the ShinKyokushin family, a lot of people are familiar with you, but would love to get a bit of a take on how you started Kyokushin or your martial arts journey as such, and then I guess work your way into the successful career that you've had as a full contact fighter, and wherever you want to take it from there. The floor is yours at the meantime.
Sure. Karate movies as a kid, and
awesome.
I guess I've always been sort of fascinated with that sort of concept of physicality and sort of physical superiority, and I even see it now in my 4-year-old son, who's looking very confused at what I'm doing at the moment.
Sure.
He's completely obsessed by superheroes, and he always wants to have superhero fights. He'll change which superhero he is, every couple of minutes, and he sort of understands those aspects of physicality and what we refer to in sports science as biomotor abilities. How strong the Hulk is and how fast the Flash is, and he's always talking about beating up bad guys, and that was me when I was a little kid as well. And that concept of physicality is something that still sort of fascinates me to this day, and has sort of been a driving force behind trying to improve my physical abilities, and then also going into a fairly in-depth study of the science behind how we actually go about that. I started training when I was 8 years old. Got my mum to take me along to the local YMCA, which just happened to be a Kyokushin dojo. Of course, I didn't know what Kyokushin was at that time. And it was the dojo of Shihan Peter Volk, who's now 7th Dan and who heads up the ShinKyokushin organisation in Australia. My first instructor was Carolyn Rogers, who was a bit of a pioneer in women's full contact karate back in the early 90s. She won multiple national titles and was sort of, I guess, a little bit before her time in terms of dominating before women's full contact karate really became popular and before they started incorporating into the world tournament. I think in ShinKyokushin, our first women's world tournament, official world tournament, wasn't until 2003, so she was a little bit before that time. I don't think it was until last year that they actually made the trophies for the women the same size as the men, but it's another sort of insight into Japanese culture. But yeah, she was a tremendous instructor, very technical, quite hard as I was 8 at the time, was a junior class, but she was pretty tough on us. But sort of cultured not only physical abilities and technique, but also self-confidence. She, even as a yellow belt, I can remember I was one of the highest kids in the class, and she would have the senior kids in the class come out and take the count and instruct. And,
awesome.
And that was really great. I think I've always been able to teach in front of large groups of people, and I've done a fair bit of public speaking as part of my work, and it's never something that's troubled me. People say that public speaking is one of their greatest phobias. I've got a few other weird phobias, but that's something that's never rattled me at all, and I think I attribute her getting me to do that at such an early age to be part of that. After I started taking more classes, I got to train more with Shihan Peter, and he's really been a main mentor of mine ever since.
That's great. That's cool. So you had your fun down there. I mean, Peter Volk, what a legend, and as well as his expertise and experience. And from there, were you a teenager in your first? I guess were you thrown into the mix? Was it in regards to full contact karate? What was your step there and journey, and then leading into, I guess, the successful results you've had over the time?
Yeah, so in Victoria, when I was training as a junior, we weren't actually able to participate in full contact competitions. So I was competing in a non-contact competition. So I guess similar to the Olympic rule set, but it was strictly non-contact, which I think had its positives and negatives. So when we look at just sort of youth sport in general, we talk about long-term athlete development, and there's a lot of argument and a lot of research backing up that argument that we shouldn't really specialize in sports too early, and having a broad range of sports is important in terms of developing athletic abilities, and that's shown to increase long-term performance, but also decrease the likelihood of injury. So, I participated in other sports, football and cricket when I was young. Sure. But I also feel that doing non-contact karate did help develop slightly different motor skills to just being thrown into a full contact karate environment. I know that you can tell even within full contact karate, those sort of competitors that have had some sort of point system background, and maybe not as evident these days, but back in the sort of 80s and 90s, you had the British team who always competed in both rule sets, and guys like Michael Thompson and Nick DaCosta, they had different sort of abilities to some of the other full contact fighters, and so I think that did benefit me in terms of footwork and cleanliness of technique. So I did feel like I got a bit out of that. But yeah, we weren't allowed to compete until we were 16. So when I was 16 and when I was ready, we were always doing full contact sparring in the dojo. But got into full contact competition when I was 16, and I guess I'd sort of been preparing for that for a long period of time, and really threw myself into it, and won a few state and national titles. I guess I'd set myself the goal fairly young of trying to be world champion.
Yeah, right.
And I'd sort of been working towards that. So part of that was wanting to train in Japan. I'd seen, I guess, first of all, from movies like The Karate Kid too, where, he goes to Okinawa, or Okinawa, I think it's actually filmed in Oahu, but there was that mystique about traveling to Japan and training in the home of karate. You also got to see other successful competitors, in Australia, guys like Judd Reed and Gary O'Neill, who went to Japan and attributed a lot of their success to the training that they got there.
Yeah.
Even back in the early days, guys like Howard Collins and Brian Fitkin, just seemed like all the successful guys, a lot of the successful guys had done that training there.
Right.
Now, whether, as I reflect at this stage in my life, whether that's actually part of what made them successful, or part of what or how much of the actual training was part of what made them successful. So I've got my own thoughts on that now, but it was definitely something that I wanted to do from an early age. I got to travel to Japan when I was probably 13 or 14.
Okay.
I think it was the year after Sensei's death, and that was a big thing for me as well. I always planned to come to Japan and train with Sensei.
Right.
Since I started training, and I think that's the same for everyone who starts Kyokushin, or at least started Kyokushin before Sensei passed away. You always wanted to meet the legend. So when he did pass away, and I can remember the day, April 1994, when I walked into the dojo, and it was actually Shihan Peter's son, who was very blunt. He said, "Oh, did you hear about Masayama?" I was like, "What?" He said, "Oh, he's dead." And I can remember where I was when he said it, and I can just remember being shocked and a bit of disbelief, because this guy Jarrett, a little bit of a bit of a hooligan at the time, and I thought maybe he was just pulling my leg, but I could see that he was very serious, and it was pretty heartbreaking, because that was always one of my goals. So when I got to travel to Japan, it was with my family. My dad was in the mineral water business, and he used to export to Japan. So I basically followed him over on a business trip and made a bit of a holiday out of it. Went to Tokyo Disney, did all those sort of things, and then went to train. So we hadn't really organised anything, and we ended up training at the dojo of Shihan Tsukamato, who was very high up in the Matsui organisation. And then he sort of recommended that we come to, or go to Hombu the next day. So we had arranged to go and train at Hombu, and I think Shihan Tsukamato didn't. Not sure whether he thought we'd actually follow through or not, but the next day we got ourselves along to Hombu, and this was at the stage where everyone was technically under Matsui, but was starting to break apart. Sure. But of course, this spoiled 13-year-old kid and his family had no idea of the political shitstorm that was going on at the time. Just wanted to go to Hombu and train. So we went in there, and I did a training session in the original Hombu. I've tried to go back, not in the last 15 years, but on 2 other occasions, and haven't been allowed in. So I feel lucky that I did actually go to train in the original Hombu there. But while we were there, while I was up in the training room, in the dojo training, my father started talking to the receptionist, and just sort of asked, what do you do here? How long have you been here? And she said, my father sort of used to run the place, and ended up being Graiseki Oyama, one of Sensei's daughters.
Yeah.
We had a similar experience, I guess, when I heard you speaking to Ben Aljamain about it. He had a sort of similar experience with the Oyama family. But, my dad's a pretty good talker. And so in that hour that I was training in there, he sort of built up a bit of a relationship with her. And later that year, she actually came out to Japan, came out to Australia. And she actually stayed with us for a couple of days. So
amazing.
Got to take her around, and you got to take her to meet Shihan Peter, and so that was an amazing experience. And then on the way out, we started walking out of the dojo and down the road, and we saw Kancho Matsui and Shihan Goda coming the other way.
Yeah, right.
And my parents had no idea who he was, and I was sort of a little bit starstruck. And at that time, he was still my Kancho. So we stopped and had a photo, and I think Goda Shihan was quite happy that we'd actually followed through and trained at the Hombu. And,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I've still got that photo somewhere with Matsui Shihan.
Very cool. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that. That's really fascinating, isn't it? The little things, and you find yourself at Ikebukuro in Tokyo, in the back streets there, where this magical place. It's the Disneyland of Kyokushin karate as such, where it's just got such a tradition and history. And you were right in the thick of it there in 94, 95. That's amazing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that, because I was a teenager and, karate was my passion at the time, I still don't think I appreciated it as much as if I had have gone there.
Of course.
But I can still say that I trained at Hombu and I still have that experience.
Yeah, that's great.
So after that, I'd following on from what we were talking about before, I'd always planned on coming to Japan and doing a stint of training. So so I finished high school in 1999, and the World Tournament was held, ShinKyokushin, or Kyokushin at that time, but our group's World Tournament was held at the end of that year, and my Shihan went over in an official capacity, and he and one of my other great mentors, Ishii Shihan, who sadly passed away about a decade ago, they were talking around some of the Japanese branch chiefs regarding which branches would accept foreign students and have them stay in a sort of Uchideshi capacity. And I was offered a spot by Miyoshi Shihan, who is he fought in a couple of world tournaments. He's now one of the VPs of ShinKyokushin, and he was the first person, I believe, to take Kyokushin to Kyushu in the early 80s. So I stayed at his dojo in Kochi, which was pretty rural. It's one of the biggest cities in Shikoku, but it's still a relatively small city. And I think in the 5 months that I was there, I saw 3 other foreigners, and I was 18 at the time. And we didn't have Zoom or Skype, and I didn't even have access to the internet. So I used to long for a Sunday phone call where I call my parents back in Australia using a phone card, and then write letters, get a letter every couple of weeks. But for an 18-year-old kid in an environment where there was no other foreigners, and the guy that I stayed with, Takezawa Senpai, who was one of Japan's top middleweights in the early 2000s. He was great. He spoke really good English, and he had me stay in his tiny little apartment. That the main room was literally big enough for both of us to stay, and for TV and his trophies, and all the space. And I think he was just told by Miyoshi Shihan that you're going to have this kid from Australia come and stay with you, and not once during that 5 months did he show any signs of being annoyed by the fact that I was there. Beat the living shit out of me every day, but that was part of the experience, and I think I grew a lot. When I started university the next year, I think I was a lot more mature than than a lot of the other kids, because I've had that experience. I think I've gradually immatured over the years, but it was an amazing experience, and I still had it in my head though that once I finished university, I was going to go back to Japan and provide as much training as I could.
That's what a journey for an 18-year-old lad finishing high school while all your other mates in Australia is such a going left or right with a bit of a junket overseas, or heading to uni or TAFE and all the above, and you're like, nah, beast mode here, going away, not familiar as such to the language, and you've experienced 5 to 6 months away, and after that you've come back to Australia, and then you've completed your university degree, and then you've continued your training.
So I came back and moved to Melbourne. So I went to La Trobe Uni in Melbourne, and Studied physiotherapy,
Yeah.
which is another thing that I'd sort of always wanted to do. I know a lot of people leave school and have no idea what they want to do. My interest in sports and again in that sort of physical development, even from a young age, I knew I wanted to do something in that space. And I think from the age of 15 or 16, physiotherapy sort of seemed like the right career path for me. I was always fascinated, as equally as I was fascinated by that ability to, have perform athletically. I was also fascinated by that concept of fixing people. I had some injuries when I was younger, and I've had a ton more since. But being able to manage people and get people out of pain and rehabilitate people was always another fascination that I had. So physiotherapy felt like the natural career choice for me. And I got the marks to get in, and I sort of deferred my placement to go to Japan. Moved to Melbourne, where I still had regular contact with Shihan Peter, but found some other mentors down there. Andrew Horacio, who's fifth dan in the ShinKyokushin organisation. Was a great mentor. He had a bit of a boxing background as well, and really got my hand skills up. I was primarily a kicker before working with him, and he's just a lovely man and a great person to work with. Judd Reed used to come into the city to train with him at Shihan Tsukamato dojo, and he was still an amazing fighter. I mean, when I met him, I think he was in his early 30s, and he was sort of talking about slowing down and backing off and retiring, and I think he went through a period at that time where maybe he wasn't as focused on training, but then he sort of made the move to Thailand, and 10 years later he was still absolutely killing it. But he was an amazing technician, a great person to train with, and obviously, as you know, a fantastic guy. And I also had Sensei Murase, who is based in Geelong, and his wife Diana. Diana actually trained in Japan for a period of time as well, where she met Tsuyoshi, and she had given me a lot of advice in terms of going to Japan and living in Japan. And,
cool.
And so they were real mentors to me as well. Tsuyoshi had placed in the 6th World Tournament. He placed 4th, losing to Suzuki in the semi-finals. So he had retired at that time, but was still, and still is in amazing condition, and was an amazing fighter. So, I had a lot of great mentors when I was in Melbourne, but I guess there was the competition experience I felt like I was lacking, and also just variety in sparring experience. I had some good sparring partners, but these guys were a little bit older, and definitely with Andrew and Tsuyoshi, they were retired, and there's a difference when you're training with guys who have fought and are in more of a coaching role, and with guys who are still fighting. There's a different sort of sparring intensity. And then also the competition experience. As you know, in Australia, you go to a tournament, there might be 4 or 5, if you're lucky, 8 guys in a division. So you may have 2 or 3 fights in a day, and you may be fighting the same guys. You might fight in a state tournament, you might go and fight in a national tournament 3 months later and up against the same guys. Whereas in Japan, even at a local tournament, you may have 40, 50, 60 guys in the division, so you're getting the chance of fighting 6 fights in a day, and there's a big difference in how you prepare for that, how your body responds to warming up, cooling down so many times, and how you manage injuries through that process. And I think that is one of the advantages and one of the reasons that the Japanese have been successful, and why people coming to Japan have been successful, is that the infrastructure of karate over here, because there's such a large population, because there's a lot of people in the tournaments, it's just a whole different experience. So those 2 things, plus the fact that I still longed for that training in Japan, that experience, and also just the culture. I love Japan as a place, and did from the first time that I came out here. It was always in my mind to come back. And when I was at uni, I sort of had it in my mind that I was going to be out here for 3 years. And I came over at the end of 2004, and our world tournaments every 4 years. So I had 3 years before the next world tournament. And I thought that, I'd stay until the next tournament, and I would have been 26 at that time. And I would have peaked then. And so I had that 3-year plan to build up until then. And yeah, so I guess in the build up to the 2007 World Tournament, I was pretty successful in the regional circuit.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because I had missed out on some of the childhood experience in full contact karate, because I'd done a point system and primarily focused on that, and then also because of the lack of numbers in competition in Australia, I tried to make up for that by competing as regularly as possible. So I competed a lot of regional tournaments and got a lot of experience, and was fairly successful. Won the Kanto tournament several times, the Shikoku tournament, Kansai tournament. So yeah, that was all good fun. It was all a fun little trophy collecting experience. But my real sights were on the big ones, the World Tournament, the World Cup.
So when you stayed there, Sensei, you were training with whom, and who was like? Yeah. How did you secure a 3-year, I guess, tenure as such because of visas and so forth? So you would have secured employment, or what was the sponsorship level there?
Yeah, so similar to how I was set up in Kochi, Shihan asked around some of the branch chiefs, and I did have my sights set on going to Fukuoka, which was Shihan Midori's branch.
Mm-hmm.
So Midori Shihan's obviously one of the biggest names in Kyokushin, and one of the greatest fighters ever, and has maybe my 2-year-old's just realised that I'm out here.
He can come on if he wants.
Yeah. Do you want to say hello, guys? So this is where I'm getting at with the superheroes. Alex can't decide which one he wants to be. And Maxie, do you want to come and say hello?
That's cool.
We're all going
for it. My wife's got my kids downstairs while I do this, and one could float in at any time, but I totally understand.
So,
oh, look at that. That's awesome. Good on you, mate.
So Max has just started training last couple of months ago.
Oh, cool.
Right, there, don't you? So, and then obviously Midori Shihan has proved to be an amazing leader of the organisation as well. So he was president at that time, and also his branch in Fukuoka was growing. You had a couple of young fighters who were at that stage sort of the up and coming. And so I had my sights set on there, and Midori Shihan offered me a spot there and a chance to be in Uchideshi. So
unreal.
Yeah, I moved to Fukuoka at the end of 2004, and we were living. I think at one point there was 6 of us in a 2-room, and we're talking room, a 6 mat, which is 9 square meter room. Yeah. We had 2 of those, and they were 4. There's 2 in each room for most of the time, but we would have some other guests from overseas and some other guests from within Japan, and it was pretty cramped, but it was a lot of fun. I was 23 when I went over there, and the head instructor at the dojo was also 23, Moni Kenta, who ended up winning a couple of national weight division titles in middleweight and heavyweight, and we had a lot of fun there. I sort of expected Midori Shihan to be there a lot more than he was. He was based mainly in Tokyo, and he was also managing another branch in Amami Oshima. So it was sort of, when you leave the head dojo in the hands of a 23-year-old.
Sure. I get what you mean.
The training wasn't quite what I was expecting, but the fighters there were good. So when we did have hard training sessions, they were really tough, and I did grow a lot from being there. And I was sort of doing a little bit of English teaching. I was doing a little bit of private physiotherapy work with a Dutch doctor there, and a little bit of personal training on the side. But I was sort of making ends meet that way, and I knew that that wasn't sort of sustainable. I also did want to experience living in Tokyo. I did want to experience training with Tsukamato, who was sort of one of my biggest idols and still is.
Sure.
And in my humble opinion, is the GOAT. Amongst all organisations and all eras.
Let's stay on that one for a note, because that's a great I guess part of your honesty with that. What brings you to saying that? Because not to again, by the ShinKyokushin angle, he is unbelievable again across all Kyokushin. But what are the factors that you felt there?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, his record speaks for itself.
Yeah.
He was 21 when the organisation split. Sorry, he was 20. So he had placed in the top 8 in the All Japan, which was a qualifying event. Ended up being a qualifying event for the two organisations that would split before the World Tournament.
Yeah.
And he lost to Yamaki, who was his senpai. So a very difficult thing to do to fight senpai anyway. And then. So he didn't really have a chance to prove himself against the other organisations. But the following year at 21, he won the World Tournament. And then he competed in 5 World Tournaments. He lost in sort of top 8, top 16, the 3 playing, and then came back at 37 and won again. So he was both the youngest and oldest.
Impressively won too, not just one. Impressive.
Exactly. Yeah, in that last World Tournament, 2011, I mean, that's arguably one of the greatest sporting performances I've ever seen. The way he dominated was just incredible. But, I mean, you don't see people who win Olympic gold medals and go for 16 years without winning and win again.
No, for sure.
And in that time, he won the World Cup. He won multiple All Japans, I think 5 All Japans. Including the one that he was suspended for.
What was he suspended for?
So when he was younger, he liked an occasional puff of the marijuana.
Okay.
By occasional, I mean daily.
Sure, for sure.
I think he didn't really look into how that affects and how long it stays in your system. And he got pinged in 2000. So, I think ShinKyokushin has only had... I believe 3 or 4 positive doping tests since they instigated doping in 1999. Now, they don't, doping testing is extremely expensive, and so as an actual organisation, they don't have resources to test everyone. Given that we're doing Budo, you'd like to think that the rates will be lower than in other sports, but you also got to be realistic and think that these athletes, even though they're not competing for money, they are competing for fame and pride, and
of course.
And the lure of that has different influences in different parts of the world. It's a whole other conversation. But Tsukamato was one of those to get sprung, and so he had an 18-month ban, which is pretty harsh for marijuana, especially at that time. That's these days athletes are made very aware of the doping codes, and the higher the level of the sport, the more that's drummed into them. I mean, I think in ShinKyokushin they have access to the WADA and the Japanese Anti-Doping Association's codes, but the football players are having very regular meetings on these. But back in 2000, it wasn't that well understood. So Tsukamato used to have a bit of a puff to relax himself, and did so a week before training, and it was still in his system. So I think at that stage, Midori Shihan really wanted to make an example of him and show that it wasn't going to be tolerated. And so he served his 18-month ban. So that was after the 2000 All Japan, which he won. I think looking back, it's actually including that one. It would have been 6 All Japans that Tsukamato won. So that's just his record. That the techniques that he has perfected and made his own. The Brazilian kick. Obviously the Brazilians, Globo Feitosa, I guess, made it most popular in kickboxing. Ademir da Costa, who was the first big Brazilian star, he was the one that really sort of developed it. But Tsukamato threw his kicks in a slightly different way that I think were more effective. They were tighter. I think Globe Fetozo definitely knocked out a few people with it, but I think Tsukamato has hurt a lot more people with his style of what he calls mahakogeri than any others. The Uchimashigeri, the Uchimashigeri in the traditional sense is obviously more of a follow-through technique. He did it as a snap, often with a feint to come around people's guard, and obviously knocked out a lot of people with that. His Domashigeri, again, people had used that technique in the past. Midori Shihan used to use it a lot, but not many people before. And Gary O'Neill had, a sort of hybrid Shiromoshigeri, Domashigeri, where he'd use that leverage of falling down to actually gain more leverage in the kick. But Tsukamato's was brutally effective, and he would do a complete somersault, so there wouldn't really be any angle. The heel would come straight down, and so it made it that much harder to defend. And yeah, I'm not a statistics person, but I'm pretty sure he's cleaned up more people with that than other fighters have.
Yeah, I'll share a couple of links. What I'm doing is, after talking to people like yourself and then people referencing things, you've got it in your library, but I love putting up a couple of links, and of course, we live and breathe it. So I'll reference that. Guys that are listening who aren't familiar or seen it, you'll be quite impressed by what Sensei's talking about.
And just the way he teaches as well. So the way he teaches those specific techniques, he really has a very well thought out system. Teaching the Domashigeri. We had practice. When we practiced in class, we'd practice first of all trying to get say if I'm kicking with my right leg, try to get the left shoulder as close to the opponent's, assuming that they're orthodox, trying to get it as close to their left foot as possible. So once you have that set up, then it makes the whole technique flow a lot easier. The same thing with his Jordan Hizageri. He, again, has cleaned up a lot of people with Jordan Hiza. The way he teaches that is to try and get your face as close to your opponent's face as possible, and then imagine you're kneeing your own chin. That's how he would set up these techniques, and just giving very basic sort of technical cues. And so as an instructor, he's very good.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
And in you bringing that up, the difference between, I guess, that journey, irrelevant to years, but let's say 07 to 14, just that block there, for example, while you were over there, and with the ShinKyokushin, legends that competed and were successful that you're aware of as well. Was there, in their classes, compared to an Australia or anywhere around the world, in their classes, were they more specific to? Does everyone split up their classes according to Kihon, Kumite, Kata, or was it a good focus on, like we kind of do here, a world tournament's up in 12 months, let's just bust out as much as we can for the fighters? What's the split there, and how did you feel that progression from your, I guess, Nidan, Sandan, and that level? How did that go for you?
So that's an interesting question. So Japan, as a society, the way that they conduct their day-to-day handlings, the way that they conduct business, very regimented, and they don't really make changes. And the way that a karate class is taught over here is very similar. So within dojos, there's slight differences, but class to class, and especially if the same instructor is taking the class each time, it will typically be the same thing. So you'll typically have your warm-up, Kihon, Ido. Different dojo focus on kata more than others. I'd say Japan as a whole probably don't focus a lot on kata. Now, having said that, they've started to do a lot more kata competitions in the last, I'd say, 5 years. And so there has been a greater focus on kata, but you sort of see the dojos and the branches that are prioritizing that. But I think overall, there's tends not to be a big focus on kata. But the structure of the class is very similar each time. I guess where you see things change in the lead up to a tournament is what happens after the class. So typically, class might go from 7:30 till 9, and then you'll have fighter training after that. Now, that might not be every night, but 2-3 times a week,
Yeah.
we'll have a very hard fighter training that takes place after the class, and that tends to be where you do your harder sparring and your harder mid work.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon to train till 10:30, 11 at night, and that's sort of been my experience. It's a late night culture here. Most people might start work at 9 or 10, but they work through till late evening. So, and it's the same with the training. The gyms here, a lot of gyms don't open in the morning, and the ones that do, I used to train before I had my own facility, used to train at the Gold's Gym, and they were open 24 hours a day. But if you went there at 6:30, 7 in the morning, which in Australia would be absolutely pumping, you pretty much have the place to yourself. So,
gotcha.
Compared to Australia, that's or compared to other places in the world, that the teaching style and the class format is very much the same. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, I think it works well for the Japanese who like to have consistency, but I don't think you can teach that way in the West, because people just aren't as patient as the Japanese. I think you need to throw in more variety. Whether it's more effective or not, I can't say. Like, going back to what we were talking about before, I always wanted to come to Japan because I believed that there was some magical secret here that you would learn after years of training here. As you know, you've trained out here. There's nothing magical. It's just the same stuff over and over again. And you might argue that that's because the Japanese have been successful in tournaments, that that's the best way to train. And the fact that Judd Reed and Gary O'Neill trained out here and they're superstars. I'm sort of a little bit more philosophical on the Japanese style of training. I think that if you take someone like Judd, for example, for someone to give up everything and move to Japan and live at the Hombu and enroll in, I think what I've done is hard, but to enroll in the Hombu Chideshi program is just another level. Someone who's willing to do that is probably going to be successful anyway. Whether they were training in Melbourne and or anywhere else in the world. Obviously, like I said before, if you've got access to training partners and great coaches, that makes a big difference as well. But in sports science, we talk about the difference between correlation and causation. And so if you want to see, for example, whether a particular training methodology or a training system is effective, you need to limit as many of the other variables as possible. So when they're doing the research, you'll have two groups of athletes, and one will be, and they'll be doing essentially the same thing, trying to keep as much consistent as possible, your sleep, diet, all that sort of stuff, and then have one group do a slightly different training intervention and see and measure the outcomes. And so a lot of things that we perceive to be caused by things, so whether it's caused by the type of training you do out here, may just be correlation. There's a lot of things that go along with training in Japan. Like I said, that the size of the tournaments, the infrastructure of the organizations out here, but also just the opportunities. Living in Japan, I've got to meet a lot of people, a lot of visiting people from overseas. So I've had opportunities to compete at other tournaments overseas and teach in different areas. And there's all that comes along with it. I think I'm sort of going off on a bit of a tangent here.
No, it's all interesting, Sensei. It is seriously, and that's why I haven't cut you off, and now I have. But in you just getting a grasp of it, it is interesting because a lot of the people that respectful karatekas, martial artists that I'm talking to have not. You're unique in that way. You're living there. You've been there for almost half your life. As such, you have the tradition of, I guess, the Aussie way of Kyokushin with some amazing, teachers and coaches and mentors. And then you also, adjusting / now that is you now, I'm assuming, you are that type of karateka. You're born in Australia and have the I guess characteristics of certain things, but now I guess, half your life has been there and you're, living and breathing it. And I guess that leads towards a lot of us, I'm not talking on behalf of everyone, that wanted that type of, fantasy that you have had. And when I've gone to Japan, I'm in and out. I go in, we prepare, we fight. I've been 6-7 times, very lucky to have competed, and then a quick seminar the next day, as you know, or a grading of some sort, and then I'm on, a nice party, nice sayonara party afterwards, and you're out. Where you're there, you're living and breathing, and that was the fortunate side of catching you at this time. In respect of, I guess the segue here is you were promoted to your fourth dan. Excuse my timing. Late last year or early this year. You would have transitioned. So you're transitioning of being fighter as such, and we haven't really gone into depth with your fighting side in the success that you had as an Aussie, and we'll get to that maybe in another time. But I wanted to grab your knowledge now with your profession, and we can promote and push your facility as well, because there will be a lot of people potentially listening to this that travel to Japan and can use you or can contact you as a reference towards a lot of the stuff that you've gone through and experienced over the last nearly 20 years. So your third dan to fourth dan as such, are you running a school over there? Can you give us a bit of the present of what you're doing, and then we'll get to the future side as well.
Yeah. So I guess just going back to what we were talking about before in terms of being in both systems, what I'm doing in terms of my teaching at the moment is pretty much teaching foreign kids who live in Japan.
Okay. Yeah.
So whilst I've got an understanding of how the art is taught out here, I teach in a very different way, and I teach more like how I was taught in Australia. So my classes are very mixed up. The format changes every session because I know that's what's needed to maintain the interest of the foreign kids. If I did that militaristic style of teaching, it just wouldn't work. And especially, no offense to the students that I've got, they all come from very privileged backgrounds, which is sort of the background that I came from. But they're all expats. They're their parents are executives, diplomats, lawyers, and so. I don't think I'm going to necessarily have a world champion out of the kids that I'm teaching. Yeah. It was funny, actually, a couple of weeks ago, one of the kids in my class was talking to the other kid, and he said, "You know what? I don't even have any allergies." I'm not meant to have allergies. That's like the new standard of being the tough kid in the school, is to be able to eat peanut butter and get up the next morning.
Okay.
So anyway, the way I'm teaching those kids is different. How I would necessarily want to be training Japanese kids if I was Australia's teaching.
I get it now. Yeah.
But basically my teaching out here started when I was working at a physiotherapy practice that I worked at for 7 years. I guess just going back a step, when I was in Fukuoka, as I said before, I always wanted to live in Tokyo and experience living out here. And wanted to train with Tsukamato, which I was lucky enough to do so for many years. And he was my main mentor in Japan. Yeah. Which is so, and we ended up fighting each other, which was one of the most surreal experiences I had in my life. We met in the semi-finals of the 2009 World Cup.
Yeah.
And, I had his picture on my wall after he won the Sixth World Tournament. I was 14 at the time. And he and Midori, Shihan and Suzuki, a whole bunch of them came out for some camps and seminars basically right after the Sixth World Tournament. And so I got to meet him. And we hadn't seen footage of the World Tournament, and everything that we heard from that especially the final match with Suzuki was that Suzuki was winning clearly, and he just got caught with a lucky shot, and he's the real world champion. And so when we had these guys come out, everyone, even though Tsukamato was a champion, everyone was sort of a little bit more excited about seeing and training with Suzuki. But at that seminar, they had us they had those instructors take us through some technique, and what Midori Shihan showed us was impressive, and what Suzuki Shihan showed us was great. But me and the mates that I was down there with were absolutely blown away by Tsukamato, just things that we had never seen before. So I was sort of obsessed with him, and he was my idol. And then fast forward 15 years, and I'm across the other side of the mat facing him, and I had it's a World Cup. I'd had 3 hard fights against a Russian and 2 Lithuanian fighters to get to that stage, but I was pretty unscathed. I was feeling pretty good. Tsukamato had won on weight against Donatas Imbras, who's this huge 6'7" Lithuanian monster, and he had to use a lot of energy using his footwork to stay away from him to get that Taiju Hante. So if I was ever going to be able to beat him, this was the time. And so we went 3 extensions, and after the 3rd extension, he got all 5 flags. And
well done to you in respect of getting it to that extent. Unbelievable.
But it was strange because I wanted to push myself harder in that last extension, but I just couldn't. And it was funny. I tell people that when I was visualizing, as I think every athlete does this as part of their preparation, visualizes themselves winning and visualizes themselves standing up there on the dais. And I'd done that with every fight that I'd imagined, but in my own mind, I could never visualize, even imagine myself beating Tsukamato. There was this mental block, A, with how much of an idol he'd been, but also B, how much he'd mentored me. He'd taught me so much, and he'd given so much of his time, and I think just out of respect, I just couldn't push myself, to beat him. And it was a surreal experience, and it's not something I sort of regret. I could have gone harder. It's just it was an amazing experience being in the Rio with him. And, so anyway, I wanted to train with him, and just going back to when I was Walker, and I was lucky enough that this physiotherapy practice, which was the main physiotherapy practice at the time, they had a position open, and so they offered me a job, and moved up to Tokyo October 2005. And so I started working there, and was working there initially part-time, and then I sort of increased my hours, continued training. I think I was working 6 days a week, but I was also training. I was doing 10 sessions a week between the sessions in the dojo, conditioning sessions, and strength work at home and in the gym, and then also doing some teaching. So one of my first physiotherapy patients was actually a principal in an international kindergarten, and she just got talking about the story, what I was doing here, and brought up karate, and she said, "Oh, do you teach kids?" And I said, "Yeah, I've taught kids before." And she's like, "Oh, okay, our kids are between 3 and 5." And so I haven't taught kids that young, but happy to give it a go. And so that was my first experience teaching. So I was teaching at her school for about 6 years, and then wanted to sort of expand that. So I expanded it to a couple of other international schools. And then, so I guess, going back and forth a bit, in 2011, I retired from competition.
Right.
And I guess retirement for any competitor, any athlete is a really hard time. A lot of us as athletes, our sport and our success in the sport is a big part of our identity.
Sure.
And all of a sudden that identity is cut off. And it's a really hard time. I guess for me, I managed it quite well because I've made a lot of big changes at the time, and I think that a couple of weeks after my last fight in the World Tournament, I proposed to my now wife. I had to hurry it up. I asked her father for permission in March that year, and because I was focused on the World Tournament, I hadn't got around to getting a proposal plan or the ring and all that. And I think at one stage his father was threatening to revoke his permission. So I did that, and also started my master's degree. So involved in master's in exercise science in strength and conditioning. As a physiotherapist and as someone who's always trained in the gym, I had a decent idea of what I was doing. But probably 2009, I really started to get more into and trying to apply some of those principles to what I was doing.
And with that, I'm going to get you on that, and I hope just to put a bit of pressure on you in a couple of months, if we can chat heavily about that, focus on another chat for an hour, that would be unreal, because your knowledge is amazing, and your YouTube and your social media content is fantastic, and your book as well. But I guess I've cut it there because we've probably got another 5 or so minutes. But let's if we could aim for that, that would be amazing, because I know your brain would just get in that zone and just go bluff.
Love to.
And that would be amazing for a lot of the guys and girls listening here in understanding. Because I guess in the meantime, jump on Sam's socials, and I'll get you to promote that, as well as your book as well. One of my students has purchased that off and loves it. So in this summary, just to finish off, can you just put forward, the way people can find you, and then if we can catch you maybe in a month or 2 months time, and segment a segment for just that sports science and what you're a master in that category, that'll be unreal.
Perfect. Yeah. So just wrap up now, or
where can people find you, and then I've got one final question just to appreciate your time.
Sure. Yeah. So Instagram, The Science of Striking, which is the name of my book. So if you want to check out the book, it's on Amazon. Just search The Science of Striking.
Yeah.
It's we can talk about it in the next chat, but it ended up being a much bigger project than I ever embarked on. I thought I'd put together a quick ebook, and then it ended up being 4.5 years and 600 pages later.
Unbelievable.
Which at that time was a sort of summary of the knowledge that I gained through the 30 years in my experience in martial arts and physiotherapy and sports science. That's The Science of Striking. It's we've got a print version and a Kindle version. I think if you order the print version, it'll probably get to you in about 2 years' time with the way being on Amazon. If you're in Australia, it's harder to get.
Yeah.
But the Kindle version is a bit cheaper, and that's obviously downloadable as well. Instagram is The Science of Striking. It's that same handle. The same on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, The Science of Striking, and I'm also on Facebook, just a personal page, Sam Gilbert. I'm on Twitter. If you'd like to increase my following from 11 to 12 to 12, I'd love that. I'm not a big Twitter user, but I am on there as well. If you do happen to be traveling to Japan, which is not going to be in the next...
Someone might be listening to this in a year's time and they'll go, flights are back on. So all good, mate. Yeah. Yeah, so come check us out at Club 360. So we're a multidisciplinary health and fitness and rehab centre. We sort of do physiotherapy, osteo, massage on that side, and we do personal training, small group training, group fitness, boxing, kickboxing, nutrition. So if anyone's in the Tokyo area and any of those services are of interest to them, all our staff are English speaking. We have bilingual staff as well for any Japanese who are interested. We're located in Rippongi, on the good side of Rippongi. Anyone who's been to Tokyo and has partied, you've probably been on the other side of the station. We're sort of more in the residential side of that area. We'd love to see you down there. That's great, Sam. So you've also got socials for that Club 360 as well.
Yes.
There's content on that, guys. So check that out. I've liked that page, and it's got good stuff. Sam, like I said, thanks so much thus far. I know we could talk for a long time, and I'm glad and I appreciate you accepting my cheeky offer there for another chat, because that's another side of you I'd love to tap into, and I'm sure other listeners as well. From here, mate, we all got to stay safe, and we all got to take care of each other. So I guess in just letting the floor is yours for a minute or two, and just letting people be aware, I guess, of how you're seeing, I guess, the future of what's happening here, on a positive note, because this is why I'm also catching people back and doing this again, so people get some positiveness about what's going on as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a business, I think what Club 360 are doing are just trying to be there for people, trying to give people as much content, but also sort of reassurance and support. I think we need to support each other, in every aspect of life, and even just within the martial arts community and the Kyokushin community, just being there for each other. And if you and I are both sort of lucky that we've got families, and we have support at home. There's people in isolation by themselves who don't have that. So if you know someone that's in isolation, reach out and just give them a phone call and say good day. I think also a lot of people are starting to do online training. We're sort of doing it as part of our business model. What you're doing with your stuff is amazing, and I think keeping up that so that people can continue training, because we all love to train, and we just do what we can.
Sensei, thanks so much. Awesome chat. Great bit of history there for my sake as well on your background. I appreciate it. I look forward to our next chat. Stay safe. Take care of your family. Guys, I'll put this out there as well that, I didn't, put the message that we all got to take care of each other. We all got to help each other. We're all in isolation, but keep training, keep moving, keep learning. Get the Kindle book, get the, Sensei Sam's book, start reading it, start looking into some of his content as well. And we'll get him back again. Sensei Sam, thank you so much.
Yeah. And Pat, before we go, just congratulations on what you've done with this podcast. I think it's an amazing initiative. I think in what we do, there's not that much information out there, and you can watch fights all day long on YouTube, but I think what you've done in interviewing people and getting some of those stories out, I think is fantastic. I think there's only one other Kyokushin podcast out there, and that only lasted a few episodes. And so, I commend you on what you're doing, and just
appreciate it. Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Thanks, mate.
Us.